The ongoing war in Ukraine, now approaching its fourth year, shows no signs of letting up as political maneuvering between world powers continues to shape the conflict's course. Recently, a proposal by US President Donald Trump aimed at ending the invasion has met with resistance from Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, who has rejected the American plan. This move has been welcomed by Russian President Vladimir Putin, who has since issued a stark warning that continued refusal could lead to further territorial gains for Russia. In Washington, the US president made it clear that he believes peace is only possible if the parties involved agree to it. Trump's words were simple but loaded with implication. It'll have to be something she likes, and if she doesn't like it, then, they'll just have to keep fighting. These words reveal a blunt but critical stance on the peace process, suggesting that unless Ukraine is willing to come to the table, the fighting will persist. Trump's proposal, though direct, seems to offer little middle ground, pushing Ukraine to either accept or continue the fight. Meanwhile, back in Kyiv, President Zelensky responded resolutely, reaffirming his commitment to Ukraine's sovereignty. Speaking in front of his nation, he declared, "I will never betray my homeland." Ukraine's national interest must be taken into account. These statements, clear and resolute, make it evident that Zelensky is unwilling to yield to outside pressure. Despite the offer of peace, he remains adamant that Ukraine's territorial integrity cannot be compromised. Zelensky emphasized that Ukraine's approach to negotiations would be thoughtful and measured. "We do not make bombastic statements. We will work calmly with America and all partners. There will be constructive efforts to find solutions with our main partner. I will present arguments, I will persuade, I will propose alternatives, but we will certainly not give the enemy any reason to say that Ukraine does not want peace, that Ukraine is disrupting the process, or that Ukraine is not ready for diplomacy." These remarks underline Ukraine's steadfast position. The country has made it clear that it is open to dialogue, but not at the cost of its sovereignty or independence. The rejection of Trump's peace plan, then, is not simply a diplomatic snub. It is a message to the world that Ukraine will not be pushed into a settlement that could threaten its very existence. Across the border in Moscow, Russian President Vladimir Putin's response was measured, though still carrying an implicit threat. He suggested that Trump's peace plan could serve as a foundation for a final settlement. "I think this plan can also serve as a basis for a final peaceful settlement," Putin remarked, offering a potentially positive take on the proposal. But behind this cautious optimism lies a clear warning. Putin made it clear that should Ukraine reject the plan, Russia will continue its aggressive military operations. If Kyiv does not want to discuss President Trump's proposal and refuses to do so, then both Kyiv and the European belligerents must understand that the events that took place in Kupyansk will inevitably be repeated in other key areas of the front, he said. His reference to Kupyansk, a strategically important city recently captured by Russian forces, serves as a reminder of the cost of refusal. If Kyiv does not accept the peace offer, Putin has made it clear that Russia will not hesitate to escalate the conflict, potentially seizing more territory. The situation in Kupyansk has become a focal point in this war, representing not only military strategy but also the broader geopolitical struggle between East and West. Russia's claim over the city has intensified the conflict, with both sides vying for control of critical infrastructure and routes. Kupyansk's capture by Russia could be seen as a symbol of the Russian military's growing strength in the region, and Putin's comment about repeating such events across the front lines suggests that Russia is preparing for further advances unless Ukraine capitulates. As military clashes intensify, the international community watches closely. European leaders, many of whom have supported Ukraine through sanctions and military aid, now face an increasingly complex dilemma. The continuation of the war is causing economic strain, not just in Ukraine and Russia, but across Europe as well. While the European Union has supported Ukraine's right to defend itself, the question remains: how long can this support last if the conflict continues to drag on without a resolution? On the ground, Ukraine continues to fight back, determined to recapture its lost territories. Despite the Russian advances, Ukrainian forces remain resolute in their defense. The government's rejection of Trump's peace plan is based on the conviction that Ukraine must be able to control its own destiny without being coerced into a settlement that undermines its territorial integrity. However, Putin's warning cannot be ignored. With Kupyansk as a backdrop, the potential for further Russian advances looms large. If Ukraine remains unwilling to discuss terms, Moscow is ready to escalate the conflict further, increasing the pressure on Kyiv. This is a high-stakes moment in the war, and both sides appear to be digging in their heels. As we consider the future of this conflict, it's clear that the war is no longer just about the immediate military objectives of each side. It is now a struggle for influence on the global stage, with NATO and the European Union firmly aligned with Ukraine, while Russia seeks to expand its sphere of influence and restore its former power in Eastern Europe. The road ahead for Ukraine will be difficult. With Russia continuing its military operations, Zelensky's government faces immense pressure to negotiate while maintaining its stance on national sovereignty. The continued rejection of peace proposals may result in even more devastating consequences for the people of Ukraine, but there is no sign that the country is prepared to surrender its independence. For President Zelensky, this is not just a political decision, it is a matter of survival for the Ukrainian people. Ukraine's future is at stake, and the outcome of this conflict will shape the country's destiny for generations to come. In the face of this ongoing struggle, one thing remains certain: both Ukraine and Russia are determined to achieve their goals. But whether those goals will be realized through diplomacy or through continued military conflict remains an open question. As the war grinds on, the world watches closely, hoping for a resolution, but fearing that the worst may still be yet to come. In conclusion, the political and military stakes of this conflict have never been higher. With both President Zelensky and President Putin standing firm, the future of Ukraine hangs in the balance. The rejection of Trump's peace plan signals that Ukraine will not back down, but it also marks the beginning of an uncertain and perilous future, where diplomacy and war will continue to collide, shaping the fate of nations. The world now waits, unsure of how this monumental struggle will unfold.